countdown timer anymore.
Oh no.
All of this
We're
is
just
just. Oh, are we live? I don't
we're
know. It
live
says.
now.
Are
We're just
we?
live now.
Oh no, broadcast video is live.
Okay.
Alex, they changed Google Hangouts, and I don't like it.
Yeah,
Change
they
is
changed it a
scary.
lot. They changed it a whole lot. It doesn't look anything like what I'm accustomed to, and I don't like it. I don't
Well, they
like
don't have
that.
a countdown timer. Usually, I am told I have 10 seconds, which is actually more like 13 seconds. I like that countdown timer. You know, I get ready. I can look all fancy. Now I just look like an asshole.
Yeah, and the worst part of all of this, literally the worst part, is that despite all the changes they made here, I just have the same array of sound effects to work with that I had before.
Yeah, we looked up the changes, updates, whatever to this, and it says there is animated GIF support, but I don't. In the 30 seconds that I looked into it, unable to determine what that means. I don't
Yeah,
even know how you would.
it's got to be a chat thing, right? Like that. There's nowhere we could just drag and drop animated GIFs into this. It's got to be just for the chat.
Well, you can do a screen share, but like I don't know if that would allow a. Like I don't know how that would work. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
sit here and try and figure it out. It seems like really compelling content, a couple weeks out from next gen platforms to talk about how do we get animated GIFs into.
This is important stuff. People need to
Yeah, it's
know
true.
how
GIFs.
how animated GIFs work in Google Hangouts. I will say your stream is coming through a lot more clear today. I don't know if
I
that has
don't.
anything to do
Yeah, I
with
don't know
anything.
what happened earlier this week. The internet was funky for a couple of days. Eh,
Also,
eh.
apparently now people can see both of us all the time. Like apparently there's a box somewhere that they can see.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, you're right.
that's
That's
terrifying.
weird. I'm looking at this now in past stream that is streaming out right now.
So
I don't know.
you can't just like stand up and start waving your balls in my face like you normally do when you're not on
No.
camera. That's
I
gonna
wonder
be
what
uncouth from
happens.
here on out.
I wonder what happens if I click hide from I'm gonna try and hide you from the broadcast. Let's see what happens. Are you gone? Can you hear me? Oh, you are. That's just truly gone. You're just truly gone. Show and broadcast. Wait, why are you muted now?
Here, now I'm unmuted. I
There you
unmuted
go.
myself.
There you go. I thought it maybe might just hide your profile. Nope, I kicked you out.
We're not going to talk about video games at all today. We're just going to play with Google Hangouts for the next hour and a half, and just see what kind of stupid shit we can get into.
Did you play any video games this week?
I did. I played a little bit of some stuff. Mostly, I played a little more Wind Waker over the course of the evenings, and I started playing Brothers. Finally, I've
Hey.
been waiting on playing that one for a while, and after hearing Brad talk about it, I felt like I had to eventually.
So you
So
started but not finished it.
I got through the first hour, and I know there's another another hour and a half left at most. So I'm gonna finish that up today. But I really like it. That's a really neat game. It totally broke my brain initially trying to do the dual analog thing of controlling both characters. Like that for some reason my brain just could not process that for the first like 20 minutes.
Hmm.
But once I got past that weirdness, it actually started to become like second nature.
I never quite got over the hump, or at least the moments where it wasn't a problem were like 30 seconds long, and then I would inevitably kind of screw it up.
Right.
But you get enough of it down that I don't think the control scheme works perfectly, but I think for what it's trying to express, both thematically and the fact that I've never seen that in a game before, so essentially it is the first attempt,
Yeah.
at least by my count, of a new control scheme, and those don't always work the greatest the first time. So, I think for a first whack, they get away with some of the clunkiness because it works thematically. So you kind of.
Yeah, it works thematically, and I think at least up through that first hour, the puzzle designs and sort of the level design stuff, I think, is pretty well attuned to that control scheme's like limitations. Like, I haven't felt like I was totally, I was borking things up or having a hard time getting the only real trouble I've had is just realizing which stick goes with which person and just keeping that straight in my head.
Yeah.
But like mechanically, it's not that difficult, but it kind of doesn't need to be because it works within the context of what they built for those controls.
Yeah, and that game gets dark.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to the really dark stuff yet. I don't think because I've heard that that's toward the end. But
It's not switching on the fly. I don't
It's
know
not
what's going on here.
what the hell?
Let's see I'm gonna click this cameraman app.
Is that what happened?
I don't know.
Maybe
Alex,
when you blocked me or muted me, you fucked everything up.
was it going back and forth before?
I don't know. I don't know what's
Camera.
happening anymore. Did you just break this whole thing?
I don't know, Alex. Alex, I don't know about anything anymore. Am I gonna have to click this back and forth like a jackass for the rest of the... This happened another time, and then it kind of just went back to normal. I'm just gonna...
Why don't you try clicking back and forth for the time being, and then see if it maybe fixes itself?
Okay.
Just because
Okay.
I want people to be able to see you too.
They are seeing me right now. I control
Okay,
this.
Good.
I'm all over this. So yeah, Brothers is a phenomenal game. Really
It is.
enjoyed it. Definitely not a game. I mean, I would have up front told you to try and play that as one shot. It's
Right.
It's short enough that it is definitely in the camp of a game that you would want to kind of take in all at once, and it gets a little strange when, or just feels a little disjointed if you don't kind of take it as a whole. So I would say if you're going to play it again, definitely.
Oh yeah, I'm
make it through
gonna
the
try
rest
and
of the
finish
game.
it tonight, basically. Just play it over the course of 2 days. I think is fine. But yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing that one. And then I played some Ghost Hunter this week for Encyclopedia Bombastica. Patrick, did you ever play Ghost Hunter?
No, I was trying to figure out what the hell you were talking about when I saw that showed up on the front page, and then I got scared because it was a PS2 Namco game.
Yeah, so it's a Sony Europe game. It was made by the Cambridge studio, and
Oh,
Sony put it
weird.
out. Yeah, and Sony put it out in Europe, like they published it in Europe, but then they didn't put it out anywhere else. So Namco picked up the publishing rights and put it out a year later in the U.S. I only remember it because I reviewed it, and I remember liking it way more than I thought I was actually going to like it. And then I didn't think about that game for like 9 years. And then for some reason this week I suddenly thought, man, I remember that game Ghost Hunter. I should see if I can play that game Ghost Hunter. And it's not available digitally anywhere because nobody bought that game. No one remembers it. So I bought a used copy off the internet for like $5, and shipping actually cost more than the game did. And I bought that and I played it, and that game holds up all right. It's a third-person action game, that's sort of thematically similar to Ghostbusters or even like the real Ghostbusters cartoon a little bit, but with like a slightly darker, weirder bent when it comes to kind of like the ghost and creature design stuff. It can get kind of fucked up in places, but it's neat. It's a simple third-person shooter, but it's good at what it is.
So are you going to keep playing it?
I don't know. I might. I mean, it's only like an 8-hour game, so if I
Only. And there's no other games coming out, so you might as well spend your time playing Ghost Hunter for the PS2.
Look, I bought it. There's a physical copy sitting on my goddamn desk right now. I will finish Brothers first. I will get into my backlog as I'm going here, and yes, I will have a lot of games to play over the next few weeks. But goddamn it, don't you deny me the fucking right to play some Ghost Hunter when I goddamn well feel like it.
I'm really glad that the camera focuses on you on this.
Good. Yes.
People said it was cutting back and forth before, so I think I broke it when I did whatever I did earlier.
Yeah. So don't ever do that again.
I'm just gonna leave it focused on you for the rest of the show.
You son of a bitch! Don't
There's
you dare!
nothing you can do about it. Now you just have to be paranoid for the entirety of the show.
Murder.
Did you play anything else?
Nothing else of real consequence. I kind of dabbled in the. I downloaded Typing of the Dead and just barely touched that. That is totally Typing of the Dead. I will play some more of that at some point because I actually really like Typing of the Dead. I don't know why. I just do.
I loved Typing of the Dead too. Like it's just really goofy fun. Here's the question though. What are the words like this time?
I just barely touched it, but I watched some of the quick look that Brad and Vinny did, and it seemed like it gets pretty weird. Like there's definitely some strange stuff they've thrown in there, which is good because the weirder it gets, the better it gets. But I played a lot of Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing when I was a kid. I played Mario Teaches Typing. I can get into some typing games when they're good, and this one seems totally functional in the way that Typing of the Dead games tend to be very functional.
Well, I fixed it.
Oh, good.
Good
work.
I guess what I meant is I had saw some let's call it bitching on Twitter because that's what people do.
Yes.
That maybe there were one too many pop culture references in this new Typing of the Dead. I just wasn't sure if you noticed anything like that in the brief bit that you played.
Not in the brief bit that I played, but again, I played for like 20 minutes just to make sure it like kind of worked on my computer and just to see what it was. I will play more of it later. It seems like a game that is totally worth $10, which I think it
Yeah.
only is through like today. So if you're gonna buy it at $10.
And Sega just dropping it out of nowhere, no fanfare. Didn't even put out a press release. I think until like a day later.
Yeah. There's like a blog post that went up briefly, I think, or sometime after it already went live on Steam, and that was just it. Hey, here's this game, go.
Yeah, so I sent like an email to Sega PR after the press release came through and was like, I would like to talk about how this happened because this is weird. And then the response was just like, oh, I don't know, we'll look into it. It's just like, oh, okay.
Like, clearly no one over there really cares. Like, maybe that was just like the weird pet project of some small offshoot team that was just like, hey, we already have this House of the Dead overkill game. Let's just throw some typing in there, see what the fuck happens.
Yeah, it feels like they just like accidentally downloaded like a torrent and were like, I guess we'll put this up on Steam.
Yeah, amazing.
Sure. I played a little bit, not a lot of Pokemon X.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna try and I have a cabin getaway with a bunch of friends this weekend, so I'll probably have some downtime. Maybe get a little more into that. I had this weird issue where, so my 3DS, the SD card becomes unseated sometimes when you shut it, and I forgot that every single time I've played the first 30 minutes of Pokemon X. So what will happen is I won't do an actual save, I'll just shut it, and then I will open it, the SD card will become unseated, and then I have to play the first 30 minutes of Pokemon X.
Oh, that's very unfortunate.
Yeah. So now I've just become paranoid about saving, and I guess some other people have had a similar issue, and it might actually just be the SD card and not the 3DS. So I guess I will try and buy maybe another 3DS, which is or another SD card. Which those things are, unlike those Vita memory cards, I could just go buy one for like $15, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, I bought a huge one for like $25, so I'm feeling pretty good about that, even though I'm not actually playing Pokemon anymore.
Yeah, you just threw it out. You put it in the.
I literally just took out the SD card I bought, and then I just set it on fire because I just don't, never again.
I'm trying to think. Did I play anything else? I spent a lot of this week because my wife was back in town. We watched a lot of horror films, so we kind of started catching up on some. Do you get trick-or-treaters in your apartment complex?
No. There's a lot of trick-or-treaters in our neighborhood, but they mostly go around to like the local businesses. They don't really go to there are like two-family homes along the side streets along where I live, but I'm on the main drag, which is all just apartment buildings and businesses. So they'll go into the businesses and get candy, and then they'll go into the two-family houses, but they will never go to the apartments because nobody ever apparently wants to give them candy.
Yeah, I wonder how much. I haven't really thought about trick-or-treating that much until I was here living with my mom, where there are realistically actual trick-or-treaters, and there were only like 4 of them last night.
Oh,
it was a bummer. Was
okay. It raining?
Earlier in the day, but it stopped raining by the time you'd be trick-or-treating. But I don't know. Maybe like the culture of trick-or-treating has changed.
There were a lot of kids out and about last night when I was walking home. But again, they were all going into like the health food store and the AT&T store and shit around here. They weren't going to houses. I don't know. I don't think the culture has necessarily changed that much. I just wonder if maybe your neighborhood just does it not have a lot of kids in it, or
I guess that's possible.
Is your house like do your house used to belong to like some crazy old murderer or something?
No, it's not a murder house. It's not a murder house. Although there is this website. I didn't use it because you had to pay for it, and it also was probably good that I didn't search it. Was you can search any address, find out if someone's been murdered in that house.
Oh, that's awesome and terrifying, but awesome.
Yeah. So I typed in my parents' address and then clicked search because why not? And then it was like, please pay us $15, and I was like, you know what? I actually don't want to know the answer to this.
Not for $15, absolutely not.
No, just not. The money put up enough of a barrier that I realized that I was nothing to be gained by knowing that the room that I sleep in, someone was brutally murdered. I don't need to know that.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe look that up once you're out of that house. Then look it up and be like, okay, well, I survived that, so that's great.
But I know that some people do that before they move, rightfully so. Or like if you're buying a house, you can do those those web services that let you know if there are like pedophiles and criminals in the area,
Right.
which seems reasonable if you
Yeah.
you have kids and stuff like that. But I don't know. There's something weird. Like I imagine most houses something horrible has gone wrong, right? Like that's
I would
probably
think.
most houses.
I feel like, especially any house that has any age to it, like at least somebody has died in it. Like maybe not murdered, maybe not horrible tragic death, maybe just like an old person passing away or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, the older a house is and the more owners it's had, the more likely it is that someone has died there.
Yeah.
This is
So
a
yeah.
great start to the show. This is a great tone to set things off on.
Well, I didn't play any games, so my mind's just wandering to the things that I mean.
What movies did you watch this week?
Well, let's see. So I caught up. I watched Rosemary's Baby, which I'd
Mhm.
never seen before.
It's great, right?
Yeah. The whole it takes its sweet time getting to where it's going, but that's also I think why it's a product of its time. A movie these days could not wait 90 minutes to tell you what is going on.
That's why 70s movies are the best, because there's so much weird slow burn shit in a lot of that stuff that like you couldn't do now because all the executives and everyone involved was just on so many drugs that it just made sense to them back then.
Yeah. So that movie holds up remarkably well. We watched Ghost Watch, which is a BBC special
Mm-hmm.
from the 80s or
Ooh.
90s. I'm not sure of the date there. But the setup is that it had a bunch of actual anchors or reporters from the BBC, and they did this one-off, which was where they were investigating a haunted house, and they play it for real, but it's all fake, and everything goes really, really badly, and I guess it had a sort of War of the Worlds kind of effect. So, for example, in the show, they have a phone number that you can call, and you could share some of your own ghost stories. Now, the thing is, the phone number is the same phone number that the BBC would share for people to call in normally. So it was a number people were familiar with if they've watched the program, or if they've called them before. Now, when they called it, it was supposed to have a voice message that said, "Hey, this is a fake show, but please feel free to share your story, and maybe we'll do something with it later." The problem is that so many people called, it crashed the boards, and the message didn't go through. So people were just getting like this error message or like a busy signal, which then just played into this notion that something was going wrong or that this was real. And it was banned. It was not re-aired. Like it caused this huge problem in the courts. And it's legitimately still pretty scary. And especially knowing the context of how it was created, it's really amazing. And I guess there was just a documentary put out about it. You can now actually get it on DVD and stuff like that. But yeah, that's awesome.
That sounds kind of awesome.
Yeah, I highly recommend seeking it out. Black Watch is saying it's on Netflix. I'm not sure if he means Ghost Watch or if he means the documentary. But yeah, worth seeking out now or next Halloween. Definitely super weird.
Totally. I watched Slither a couple of nights ago, which is a favorite of mine and Sam's, though it grows, like she forgets how gross it is until it starts getting really gross, and then she just starts squirming like crazy. Like I can't deal with this. But that movie is still super great as horror, sort of ridiculous horror comedy goes.
Yeah, Slither's fantastic. I really like James Gunn. Continues to blow my mind that dude is directing Guardians of the Galaxy.
I know, right? It's bizarre, but it's awesome.
Yeah, if you watch his films, you suddenly understand why he would be the right guy for a job like that.
Totally.
Because he can handle weirdness. And then the last movie we watched last night was I Spit on Your Grave 2.
Oh no. Oh, okay. So this is the sequel to the remake, right?
Yeah, and it's directed and written by the guy who did the remake. I don't know who his name is. Those movies are a particular brand of extreme.
Yeah.
So if anyone's not aware of how these movies function, they have a formula. Their formula is basically a woman is beaten and sexually assaulted to the point of depravity, and then somehow she escapes and exacts horrible, horrible vengeance on those that have done this to her. The problem I have with these movies is that the vengeance is not 1-to-1.
Right.
Because what they do to the way these movies are made to work is that the character and the viewer are both so disgusted with the individuals that you are able to enjoy, or there is catharsis from the extracting of revenge. Rape revenge films are a trope in they are a horror genre. Not a very good one, but they do exist. The problem is what is extracted is just violent and extreme.
Right.
It's not sexual depravity in response. So it doesn't, like, I was watching this with my wife and another woman, and they've seen the original, and they're up for anything when it comes to a horror film. And that was our discussion at the end of it, was it didn't feel satisfying because when she's just screwing them up with weird tools, it's not the same, because what they did to her is not equal measure of what she did to them. And
right.
I know why that happens. I understand why it would be constructed that way. But I think I'm done watching those films unless they want to let the woman get her jollies too somehow. These movies don't really work, because otherwise it just comes across again as a weird male power fantasy.
The original was just like kind of an cheesy exploitation movie that just happened to be particularly lurid and kind of mean-spirited, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
I saw that movie years ago. I have never watched the remake or the sequel, and I won't, because
don't recommend them.
I find that whole pocket kind of more even more vile than most horror tends to be. So it's a level that I kind of can't deal with personally.
It doesn't have a message at all,
no.
And even the catharsis is not cathartic. So I'm gonna stop watching those.
I think that's for the best. On a lighter note, I had my yearly Ghostbusters viewing last night, which is
that's much more lighthearted. There's no
considerably more
revenge fantasy there.
I am constantly blown away by how I watched that movie like solid 100 times when I was a kid, and every time I watch it as an adult, I progressively realize more and more how cheesy and bizarre and totally just seriously antiquated the effects, and just everything in that movie is just so perfectly 1984 that it's amazing. And the more I watch it, the more I realize just what an amazing encapsulation of that weird era and period of time that movie is, on top of being a pretty still very funny movie and kind of ridiculous in its own right.
So here's the question, though: where do you stand on Ghostbusters 2?
I still like Ghostbusters 2. I agree with everyone.
Yeah, you do, because Ghostbusters 2 is a good movie.
It is. It's inferior to the first, certainly, but
sure.
It doesn't have to be as good as the first to still be good, and it is, I think, still pretty good. It gets really silly, but I mean that's fine. It doesn't have to be super dark or weird or anything. It's a painting ghost, and then the Statue of Liberty happens, and whatever. Jackie Wilson, it's great.
Yeah, Ghostbusters is a good movie.
Totally.
Some stuff happened this week. Some news happened.
It did. Some news. Why don't you kick things off?
Well, we should probably start with what most people have talked about this week. So there's going to be some differences between these consoles when they come out, and that extends and includes some of the games. Last time around, when 360 PS3 launched, the Xbox had sort of the advantage in terms of some of the games that were coming out, despite the fact that I think most people conceded the PS3 in some respects was more powerful but harder to tap into, and especially with that Unreal Engine, Xbox games just in general, especially multi-platform stuff, that's where you wanted to play a lot of those games.
Right.
I remember stuff like Stranglehold, some of that early stuff that just was not, frame rates and pop-in and textures were pretty ugly on PS3 for a while there. And it seems like it's going to be kind of flipped a little bit this time around. Specifically, people are talking about how Call of Duty Ghosts is going to be 720p but 60 frames a second on Xbox One, and 1080p and 60 frames a second on PS4. So the idea that there are differences between these two consoles, not that surprising. It sounds like the RAM, which is more difficult to work with on the Xbox One, is the culprit. And for a lot of these games, it will get sort of sorted out for multi-platform stuff. But what this means long term, is really hard to tell. And I think if you start breaking down why people are so hysterical over these differences, I think it is exactly that. It is trying to project and predict what does this mean for the next 5 years, and does it mean anything? And that's that for people that are maybe just buying one console. I think that's definitely an important question.
Well, and then, on top of that, keep in mind that nobody's really been able to have like a really meaningful console wars, flame war in several years, because usually that stuff really kind of sparks up heavily around the time new consoles are launched, and it's been, kind of dead for a while. So I imagine there's a lot of really pent up rage amongst people that are, that have chosen sides hardcore in this battle and really want to argue with one another. But the question is, does that stuff really make a huge, massive difference or, massive impact on the game you're playing? And, people were talking about some of the resolution differences between was it Battlefield 4, I think, and the next-gen versions, and it sounded like, despite the fact that there was seemingly a resolution issue or difference or whatever, like looking at the two games, you could not really tell unless you were just taking a microscope to it. And I've never been the sort of person that wanted to take a microscope to a game on that level, because it's like, if I'm still getting the same basic experience that I would be getting on any other platform, does it really matter that much is the question.
Well, I think what we're seeing is it matters to some people a great deal more. And
Sure.
I'm also in the position that both of us are. We're going to buy both consoles. So,
But even if I was only buying one, even if I was only buying, say the Xbox One, does this system does it play the games basically the same way that the other platforms will? And so far, no one has said, no, this game is severely hampered because of these technological problems. They're saying, no, there are some slight differences in what we can do visually, slight differences, and that's that's worth bringing up and it's worth talking about. But is this really? You can't project what's going to happen with a console like this 5 years from now just because there are some early issues trying to get launch games working at the same level.
Yeah, and again, that's why I'm trying to look at a bigger picture as opposed to sort of, what does Battlefield 4 look like? What does Call of Duty Ghosts look like? Because I think that's less important. It's more, does that indicate a trend? And I don't know. And there's a lot of armchair analysis happening from a technical perspective, and quite clearly the PS4 is a little more powerful this time around. So it also matters, what the market share of these two machines are. How does that stuff shake out? That determines where people start putting their work from a developer's perspective. If let's try and take a possible scenario that people will try and extrapolate from this. So is it possible that in the future, most multi-platform games are 1080p on PS4 and 720p on Xbox One? Like, that's a possible scenario that people would lobby about. Is that a reason to buy the PS4 or the Xbox One? Like, yeah, if you want to buy one, you should probably buy the one that is going to have the better versions of games. I mean, that's why a lot of people bought an Xbox 360 over a PS3. Was so many games are built on the Unreal Engine that seems like a reason to buy that machine over the other one.
Sure.
I temper how much to look into this simply because the developers I've talked to say that a lot of this should be ironed out with the next set of games. Which I feel like more likely to happen is that PS4 exclusive games might look better, just like a lot of late PS3 games have looked remarkably better. I mean, Last of Us is a remarkable technical achievement that doesn't seem like it would be possible as well as it is on Xbox 360. But we're not quite there yet, and so it's just, for me, I have trouble getting into worrying about it too much because A, I'm buying both machines, and B, I can't really tell the difference when I've tried. So that's on me. I'm just not a technical guy. I played on an Xbox 360 with a 20 gig hard drive for the last 6 years. So I have dealt with shitty frame rates and lower resolutions, and it's just not a thing that is that important to me.
Sure.
And I feel like that's. Go ahead.
No, so I was just say some people in the chat are talking about the $100 difference being kind of a key factor and all that, and that is fair.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, if it's a more powerful machine and $100 cheaper, like, that starts to add up pretty quickly. And that seems like a meaningful reason for someone to want to buy that version of the other. I mean, what I would temper people with, and this happens this happened last generation too, is that we get these new machines, and then the expectation is that we're going to get full res 60 frames a second because it's new hardware. And that's not going to happen. Like, that is just not going to happen. On consoles, what tends to happen is that developers choose a lower frame rate so they can do more with what's on screen. That results in a faster frame rate on the PC because you have better capable hardware. And that's going to happen this time too. Like, 30 frames per second is going to be what everyone targets this generation, and if you want 60, then you need to go somewhere else. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of games straddle between 720p and 1080p and do these weird resolutions like 900p, because that's kind of just the way it works out. And I don't know. I get a little frustrated because I feel like a lot of the feedback I get is yelling at me to want to choose a side. I just feel like I'd rather wait a couple weeks and see it all for myself rather than looking at video analysis and screenshot analysis and taking other people's word for it. I would much rather wait a couple of weeks and be happy to weigh in when I can do that firsthand.
I mean, they're yelling at you to choose a side because they're tired of trying to project their own side on you. I mean, that's all I remember when I was working at GameSpot and we had that System Wars forum, which I think maybe still exists. I have no idea.
That's gross.
I know, and we put it there because we specifically wanted to keep it away from the rest of the forums.
Oh, okay, sure.
It was basically like a little prison cell we built for them to go into to do all their terrible, nasty business, so that everyone else could kind of exist the rest of the, in the rest of the forums and not be harassed by that. But yeah, those people were nuts. I mean, those people would just, every little slight toward their preferred console even saying this version is not as good in this review. Would just set them off, and that mentality is something I've never understood and never been able to get behind on any level. It's like, I understand not everyone can play every platform, and I understand that you want to pick the best one for your style of gaming and the games that you love, and that's totally reasonable. But you can do that without having to turn it into a gigantic pissing contest that you're not even really invested in beyond the money you spent on a console. You don't work for these companies. You don't have to make everyone agree with you. That's not how the world works.
I mean, I suppose there could be a tension that exists, and it's hard. Now we're getting into armchair psychology of why some of this stuff plays out the way it does. But if let's say the Xbox One takes off and the PS4 is playing second fiddle, one of the things that we did see this generation that was fallout from the Xbox 360 being sort of like the de facto platform was that games were on multi-platform. I cannot get that word out this morning.
It's okay.
Multi-platform targeted for lower specs, and also had to assume there wasn't a hard drive there. We started seeing a shift of that a little bit towards the end of the generation, where developers just said, "F it." But the Xbox 360 not including a hard drive by default screwed up a lot of games this generation, and it did hinder games in a way that was unfortunate. But developers had to program their games, thinking that people might just have, those memory sticks that you could buy. That I don't know anyone that actually had one of those things.
I think we had some in the office, but that was it.
Well, it was useful for transferring saves and stuff like that. But that is I guess maybe what drives some of this is if the Xbox One takes off, then you are looking at again a technically inferior console being the benchmark as opposed to the PS4 being the target, and then just lower quality games coming out on the Xbox One. But yeah, I don't know. Just for me, it's just we're so close, and given that I'm not a tech guy, I never have been, and stuff like this has never bothered me. I've always just kind of dealt with what I've got, and if it's not as good as what other people have, that's okay. We're just also so close. I just want these consoles to be out so I can see it for myself, and I don't want to rely on other people to tell me how I should feel about something else.
Was it like 2 weeks at this point? 2 weeks until PS3?
Yeah, the 15th, and it's the
crazy.
first. It's November.
Crazy.
Yeah, there are a lot of games coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I've just already decided I hate the PS4 anyway because it doesn't play MP3s and audio CDs, so, whatever.
Yeah, and that's, I think, also that's part of the funny part is some of the screaming that's happened at me is ironic, given that if I had to choose one console, I would choose the PS4. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway, it's unfortunate that media stuff happened too. I guess that's another story that came out this week.
Right. Yeah, and it's weird because it's like basically they're saying, you can't play MP3s. It doesn't play audio CDs, which I mean, I think I own audio CD, at this point, so whatever. But the fact that it doesn't do like some of the media streaming stuff, the PC streaming stuff that it had before, the PS3 had, was kind of a bummer. But I also wonder how many people actually used that in the grand scheme of how many people bought that system, because I don't think I ever really used that stuff on PS3. I used it a little bit on Xbox 360, but not much.
I think more people than you might think. It's probably not, a majority of the user base. It's a minority of the user base, but the people that did use it really loved it, and there doesn't appear to be a good reason why they took it out, except that they want you to buy stuff on their marketplace.
Right. And yeah, and that's kind of a bummer because, as much as I don't mind having those, specific services that Sony provides in there, like, I would also really love it if I could just kind of use the stuff I had already been using for years, theoretically, considering I still really wasn't using that stuff on PS3 anyway.
Yeah. I use an Apple TV, and connecting my computer to my PC to do most of that stuff, so it's not a concern for me, but I don't blame people who have turned their PS3 into a media center to be upset that the console they're going to switch over to suddenly has that stuff disabled. Largely, it seems, because they want you to, buy their stuff on a marketplace. If it gets patched in, that's possible. I saw, Shuhei Yoshida mentioned that he met with the hardware team and they talked about, the feedback they've gotten about these features being taken out.
Actually, sorry to interrupt you. Someone in the chat is saying that they are apparently talking about patching in MP3 and like DNLA.
Did they actually
stuff.
say that?
I don't know. He says that on Twitter. There's some sort of Sony response on Twitter that's saying that.
Okay. Well, if that's true, that's great. The most I had seen was that Yoshida said they had heard the feedback.
Right.
And in the past, that has mean they have actually gone and done that. So if that happens, and it just happens to be that's a feature they couldn't get in at launch, that's fine. But the fact that they didn't have a line ready for them to say, hey, this is just a feature we couldn't get ready for launch, it's coming later, suggests to me they didn't want you to have it.
Right.
And if it's changed, it'll be a result of feedback. And if it gets changed, that's great.
Yeah.
And if somehow Microsoft can have that flipped on at launch, that would be at least something they could brag about, I guess.
Totally.
I guess some of the other limitations, we saw like a fact come out earlier this week. No external hard drives on the PS4, but you can swap out the hard drive inside. I don't know what SATA means, so I'm not going to get into how exactly that works, but there are certain requirements for what kind of hard drive can go in there. 500 gigabytes is a lot, but if some of these games are going to be 40 gigs a piece,
it's not going to be a lot for very long.
It's essentially 500 gigabytes is going to translate into, what was 20 gigabytes in the past. If you have 500, you're going to have to do, some hard drive management in order to make that work over the long term, especially if you play multiplayer games and keep a lot of games on your hard drive.
Cool. Yeah. It's. I hope they patch it in. That's kind of where I come out on all that stuff. So.
Yep. What do you got?
Let's see. Well, we got our first look at The Walking Dead season 2 this week.
That's maybe saying too much at what we got to look at.
The trailer is basically nothing. I realize that. It's just like, hey, here, remember Clementine? Here's Clementine. She's back. Yep. But the detail that came out of this was that you will be playing as Clementine in the game this time around. So, the season 1 was basically, you being able to prepare her for what life will be like, later on in the world. And now season 2 is you getting to actually experience that. I've seen a bunch of people grousing about how the idea of playing a little girl or whatever is just doesn't make a lot of sense to them, doesn't seem like it would really work. The only meaningful argument I've seen about that is that some people liked the ambiguity of kind of sending her off, into the world and not necessarily knowing how that played out, which I kind of get. But I also don't think that, that necessarily ruins anything, especially if, the writing ends up being as kind of thoughtful and, kind of well-paced as it was in that first season. Personally, I think it's a great choice. I'm super interested to see what they do, in terms of creating choices that a child would be able to make within the context of that world, because that's something that I've never really seen explored before.
Yeah, I think the writers at Telltale, even though Sean Vanneman and Jake Rodkin, who were the showrunner equivalent on that first season, have moved on. I guess the Walking Dead game is following the Walking Dead TV show. Can't hold on to a showrunner in the next season. But it sounds like they've left it in very capable hands, and those two guys did not do everything to build that season. Yeah. There were a lot of other talented people. I think they have earned the right, especially after Wolf Among Us, which was such a strong debut. They've earned the right to take the path they want, and let's see how they do. They've definitely earned a lot of rope on this, and I think what you're bringing up is a really interesting idea. If they write Clementine, given that it appears she's just it's going to take place not too long after. It's not like we're jumping 7 years in the future and she's an adult. She is still very young. It would be odd if they wrote her and the choices she's given and the choices she can make as though it is the adult that is playing the game,
right? And
not writing her as though she is a child. And how they express that tension, I think, could be really interesting. And I'm curious to see how they play that out. Because if you were just to write Clementine as though she is suddenly 27, she's not. Right. Children make mistakes. Children are naive, and maybe those are ways that the writers can explore, messing with the player in some interesting ways. I'm curious to see how they work with that.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, they've earned the right to try, to take the story where they want to go with it, and the first season is one of those, experiences that has stuck with me long, long after I finished playing it. And, I realize that Vanneman and Rodkin are off, doing their new thing now, and it's a new set of writers. But I have hope, especially after playing The Wolf Among Us. I have hope that there is a larger, better group of good writers at that studio, because, that game, even having no interest in the subject matter ahead, beforehand, totally sucked me in, and it led me to believe that there are other people at Telltale who can guide these kinds of things and do the same kinds of, thoughtful stories that first Walking Dead season had.
Yeah, and we don't have to wait long. It sounds like we're gonna get that first episode in December.
Cool.
So, I am looking forward to playing that video game.
Same.
It does. Someone, this isn't in the chat specifically, but someone brought it up. On my Tumblr, does it get weird, given the fact that Walking Dead was my favorite game of last year, when you start to think of how you construct Game of the Year awards and stuff, both of the Telltale's new seasons are not going to finish in the same year, and what does that do to the game? I don't know.
I would put this, I do it the same way that sports seasons label their champions. If a season finishes in a year, then that is the year it is up for Game of the Year.
So 2014.
So it would be a 2014 Game of the Year type thing.
That makes sense.
That's my opinion on it. I imagine that other people have different viewpoints, but it's like, you don't call the Miami Heat the 2012 champions because they won in 2013. So that's right. how you work it out.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the only fear there is that games that come out early in the year are often forgotten, and not usually forgotten because and people have asked me about this before too. I don't think they're forgotten on purpose. It's just that you respond more strongly to the stuff you have experienced more recently.
Sure.
And so it makes sense that you'll have forgotten some of the emotional resonance. Or why you liked a thing if you have 8-9 months separation from it. But if The Walking Dead Season 2 is as powerful as The Walking Dead Season 1, it won't have any problem with staying power, I don't think.
Totally.
So how upset are you, or are you happy that South Park: The Stick of Truth delayed to March 2014? And if you look historically at games delayed to March in the past, that is the first step to getting delayed to May.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm of two minds about it. One, I'm disappointed because, goddammit, I really do want to play that game. Two, the other side of it is they've never let people have hands-on with that game, which says to me, especially in conjunction with what the representative from Ubisoft, who I can't remember who it was, but they were basically, when they put up that blog post, they straight up said, we realized we had to turn that game upside down to make it what we wanted it to be, which says volumes about how willing THQ was just to put that thing out, kind of half finished, so long as they could get it out and make some money.
Yeah.
But it also, it says to me that they want that game to be good. They know what they have. They know what that game can be, which is, theoretically the first really good South Park game. And I respect the notion that they don't want to put out a busted ass game. It's like, it's disappointing because Ubisoft has already done this with Watch Dogs, and to a lesser degree with The Crew. So that's like three, The Crew was never officially this year, but like it was kind of, hinted that it would be. So, but technically that's like 3 games that they have had to delay, all of which had at least some anticipation level attached to it.
You have to imagine that, if Ubisoft is already hurting financially, their stock took a hit because of these other delays. Adding this one on here, it does. If they were purely interested in the money, that game would have been pushed out in December.
Totally.
And it does make you maybe feel pretty good about how Ubisoft is treating the quality of it by pushing it to March, which is the end of a fiscal quarter. I don't know if that's the end of their fiscal year. I don't know how Ubisoft's is structured. But I feel like it's a good thing. Obsidian stuff has had quality issues in terms of polish in the past.
That's putting it mildly.
And this is Matt Stone and Trey Parker's first real game. Like, not surprised if there's been bumps in the road. If you've looked at how they developed the show, I wonder how that's transitioned over to them doing the game. Whether they make all sorts of changes at the last minute, like take stuff to the to the nth hour. I'm glad it's out of the way because I think dropping in December is just such a bad idea for most games. Like, it just doesn't work out sales-wise for a lot of games. I remain pissed at Ubisoft that they dropped my favorite Prince of Persia game, that cel-shaded one from 2008, in December, which means no one played it. That game was awesome.
No one played that game.
And that game was awesome. I really liked that game. And so December's just tough. So I think March makes a lot more sense. Gives that game some breathing room. If all the games that are sort of set for the spring come out in the spring, we are in for one hell of a spring. I think that South Park would be coming out the week before or the week after. I'm not sure which. Of Dark Souls 2 and what's the other? And
Titanfall's right around there, isn't it?
Yep, Titanfall.
Yeah. So that's gonna be a busy ass time, but. Again, if they can make that game what it should be, which again is basically Paper Mario with South Park and way more cursing, then by all means, I'd take the time, make it happen, because I don't want to play a busted ass version of that game. I want to play one that's actually what they have set out to make. Especially considering this season of South Park has not been very good for the most part. So I've been kind of just like, I want actually a good South Park fix. This season's been kind of a bummer for the most part.
I wish they would move on. I know why they don't.
I feel like they're done. They've said they're going to be done soon. They don't have a whole lot more invested in doing too many more seasons. I don't remember where or when they said that. So
because I know South Park is essentially a template for whatever they want to do. South Park doesn't have sort of a narrative end because South Park week to week is just whatever they want to say, and they say that through South Park. So right. I get why they don't like to give it up, because it's essentially every week they get to blog in comedic form through these characters. About whatever they want to muse about. But yeah, I haven't watched it in years. I've tuned in every once in a while when people say, "Oh, last night's episode was really strong."
The last couple of seasons were actually pretty good. This one has not been. Like, there's been half of the Goth Kids episode was really funny, and then there was one really funny one before that. But other than that, it hasn't been very interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of Titanfall, it was made known this week that Titanfall, its exclusivity to Microsoft and PC platforms, will be for the entire lifetime of that title. There had been some people who had, I guess, been holding out hope that it would eventually come to the PS4, but that does not appear to be the case in this situation. The people involved, like Respawn, has said they are not, averse to ever making a PS4 game, and that this just happens to be a deal that EA made for this title. So it's not like it's, the end of the world. They're just a Microsoft exclusive studio or anything. But, I wonder, did you ever really think that this game was going to come out on other platforms? Because it seemed like the exclusivity was pretty well built into it from the moment they let that thing fly.
I wouldn't have been surprised if as a result of ramping up for Titanfall 2, in which they would be developing on, on PS4 as well. That seemed to be what they were, pretty strongly hinting at for the future. That as a result of that, they would be able to port Titanfall. Oh, someone at the door. Go get them, dogs. Go get them. And they'd be able to port that game pretty easily to the PS4. So then, as a result, they would just kind of give it over for free. But those multiplayer games are weird because the single player is being fused into Titanfall's multiplayer, and those historically ports that come years later or a year later just don't do very well. And a multiplayer one, I think, would have even more challenges facing it. So it might have just been sort of a, hey, PS4 owners, here you go. But I think it's very clear from the way Vince Zampella has talked about on Twitter that you can reasonably expect Titanfall 2, whatever they call it, to come out on every platform. But you never know. I mean, if Titanfall is a huge hit, Microsoft's going to have a big incentive to try and convince Respawn to stick with them. But the way that Vince talked about it on Twitter, he seemed legitimately disappointed that they had to lock out Sony platform holders forever for the original game.
Just makes me wonder how much money Microsoft actually threw at them to make that happen. I mean, EA, they're not usually into the whole platform exclusivity thing. They usually try to throw things out on as many platforms as they can. So I have to imagine it was at least 1 or 2 dump trucks full.
Yeah, and maybe it's marketing. It's hard to know exactly how that stuff shakes out. It takes many different forms when it comes to securing those exclusives. But putting aside the fact that it's a bummer that PS4 owners won't get to play it, it's a smart move. That game has, of the current announced next-gen games, some of the most buzz behind it. People are very excited about it. I'm very excited about it. And so Microsoft locking that up in the spring when we're going to be moving from supply constraints to normal everyday people getting in on this next-gen stuff, that game launching in March, well, that's coming at a really good time. And I expect in response Sony to really, really get behind Destiny. Even though Destiny is going to come out on everything, if Destiny is coming out in, say, April, I expect that Sony is going to want to try and Call of Duty that game, and they're going to want to try and make that, if you're going to play Destiny, you're going to play it on PS4, and we're going to give you a lot of good reasons why, and in the marketing, we're going to make it seem like it's exclusive to PS4. So I think that's probably Sony's play here, is just to double down on Destiny. And I think Destiny looks interesting. I think it doesn't have quite the buzz, but my guess is, as a Bungie game, that buzz will only build.
Yeah, I think
once that beta is out.
I think once next year starts, they're going to start getting real heavy on that stuff. I think they're just kind of waiting until this holiday rush ends before they start going real nuts with the marketing for that game.
Yeah. I mean, that beta I think is going to be indicative.
Totally.
I'm excited to play the beta. I'm excited to see what Bungie has got cooking up, because they've nailed it in the past. I have no reason to doubt they won't nail it again, and I'm curious to see, as we start seeing more people try and make this massively multiplayer single player stuff work, how it all sort of pans out.
Totally. I got a few little headlines. I don't have anything too big left at this point.
No, we hit most of it, so why don't you start rolling on through?
Well, if you want to throw some questions at me and Patrick in the chat, feel free to do so. We will respond to them as soon as we get through these. The Wii U sold 300,000 units worldwide last quarter, which is double what it did the previous quarter, but also still negatively impacting Nintendo financially. It is, I think, to date sold a little over 3 million units worldwide, which is comparable to the 3.9 million units that 3DS has sold in the last 6 months. Wii U, man, how you feeling these days about that thing?
Well, I saw a quote from Iwata that said they are still trying to hit their financial targets, and they feel like Christmas is where a turnaround can occur for that platform. I mean,
he's going to be on Mario.
He's right that Christmas is historically where Nintendo has seen sort of their fortunes change. That started what happened with the 3DS with the Ambassador program and the price cut, and a lot of software that came out that fall and that Christmas. It's an even bigger uphill battle for the Wii U, and I want to say there was a quote from Iwata that said they would not consider sort of changes to Nintendo's direction until they sort of get through this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So, we're already talking about how there's a lot of big games coming out in the spring for next-gen platforms. We could conceivably be looking at, a management change at Nintendo in the spring if they really miss that target, which so far it's not looking good.
Yeah.
And, what that future holds for Nintendo, I mean, I don't know, it makes me nervous. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the future is for that company. I mean, obviously 3DS is doing very well for them, but the Wii U is kind of a money pit right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was. Who knows if it'll stay that way now that they've turned off Spot Pass because apparently kids were using it to trade filthy images with one another, and by kids I mean me. So I don't know if that's actually a big deal or what they're even going to do. It sounds like they're just going to change their parental controls around a little bit to try and make that not happen anymore. I just thought that was really weird and funny that happened.
Yeah, and dude, we are in November. Super Mario 3D World is coming out in November.
I know, right?
So
Only a few weeks. Only a few weeks left. And then we'll be playing that silly, awesome-ass looking game.
Oh, my God. I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Well, you'll be less excited about this one. Tiger Woods is no longer with EA. Their PGA Tour game will no longer feature the visage of the world's greatest golfer, and he is apparently now seeking out other branding opportunities within video games. Patrick, being the golf aficionado that you are, who would you like to see pick up Tiger Woods into a golf game with him?
Wouldn't it just be 2K? Would this be their opportunity to try and take another sport from EA?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where the competition is at. The only other place I could think of is one of the basically like a Microsoft or a Sony wanting to have someone in-house make something, I guess. But even those other than baseball, I don't think Sony has any exclusive franchises anymore, and Microsoft hasn't done its own sports game in a very long time, really.
No, I don't think Microsoft's going to get into that game, and I guess Sony could. I mean, they killed off baseball for everyone else with MLB The Show. Hey, there's a game that I don't care about at all. My God, do I want to see what that looks like on PS4?
Oh yeah, totally. Golf games, visually, because it's just a dude.
Baseball games.
Oh, baseball. You're talking about baseball.
Yeah, MLB The Show.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Baseball.
Wild swing from golf's gonna look great in next gen to baseball. Who gives a shit? Alex
yeah, it's
Navarro.
baseball. Yeah.
I
don't even really like golf that much, but I like golf games. I don't like baseball games that much.
I don't like either. I don't care for either. But MLB The Show is an incredible looking franchise, and
it looks great.
I hope they continue 3D on that because I think PS4 3D would look pretty good.
Yeah, probably look all right. Yeah.
Hey. What do you think of this Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z trailer?
I think it looks like hot garbage, personally. I'm saying this because I've actually played that game. I sat there and I played it for a solid 20 minutes or so.
That's a long time.
It is for that game. I did not enjoy playing it. It does look like it has a great visual style. Sure, yeah, they've used cell shading really, really well. That's about the only thing that game seems to really do well, because, man, that fucking dialogue, holy shit.
Oh, I don't know who thought that was funny, because that's the thing, right? That's if you want to be crass, if you want to be a game that's sort of surfing away on exploitation, you got to be funny, you got to be clever, and I don't Duke Nukem Forever, not funny. Bulletstorm, pretty funny, I thought anyway.
Reasonably funny, funnier certainly.
Because if you're going to be crass, you also got to be clever. And Yaiba ain't
not
none of
clever.
That. Not clever at all.
No, but didn't you see the part
shit.
where the truck drove into the legs? It's like it's a metaphor. There's layers to peel back.
Casual misogyny is not even in the top 10 of the problems that trailer demonstrates that game has in terms of its script.
It is an onion of terrible ideas. The more you peel back, the more they just keep showing up. And yeah, what I played of it, I did not enjoy. So I'm not holding out any hope whatsoever for that game. I'm sorry. I don't like to prejudge things, but that was definitely one where I threw the controller down. I was just like, okay, never again, never. And
it was so weird too. So, I don't necessarily watch from start to finish all the trailers we put up on the site. Stuff that is like, yeah, our audience will be interested in this. I'll just grab it, upload it, and take a screen capture and kind of move on with my life. Especially because I just didn't. I was not anticipating Yaiba at all. But then, so I put it up, and then finally watched the trailer, and just my mouth just dropped as I was watching it.
Holy shit!
And then had to go and change the caption for the trailer because it's like I can't put this up with a straight face because I can't.
No.
Now that I have watched it. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a mess.
I wonder. So then, here's the real question: is so they'll put out another trailer at some point. I mean, this game's coming out. Do they double down? Do they just put up two middle fingers to everyone and say, "Screw it, we're embracing this"?
If you've already gone this far,
do they tonally change it?
No, they're not going to change that game at this point. So yeah, at this point, if you've already committed yourself that much to the bit, you might as well just take it to the end. You might as well just go down in flames rather than just trying to patch up pieces here and there to make it less offensive, because you're not going to fix that game. That game is what it is, and it's going to be what it is pretty much the whole way through, I think. So yeah, you might as well double down and just make it as horrible and offensive as humanly possible, because at least then you're trying. At least you're aiming for something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You got anything else?
Nope, that's me.
All right. Let's answer
some
questions in the chat. Oh, yeah. Bryce W. Gilbert points out, Sony announcing something Pocket Station related. What?
What?
You didn't see this?
No.
Yeah, there's a trailer. It's all in Japanese, but in a couple of days they are teasing something related to the Pocket Station.
I don't even know what to say about that exactly.
I don't know either. What could they possibly have in store for the Pocket Station?
I have no idea.
Cannot even fathom a guess at what they would be doing with that brand in 2013.
Ugh. Faux Hollow wants to know, what's up with Need for Speed Rivals? That's my next-gen racer, but not a whole lot of info out.
Oh.
Solid release date. That's not entirely true. They said that game's coming at launch for new consoles, so it should be ready. We put some trailers up. I've talked about it a little bit on this show before. It's a Need for Speed game, but it seems like a good one. The pervasive multiplayer stuff seems like it's all pretty good, and it looks real nice on next gen and PC. So no, that game seems fine. I'm not really sure what you're worried about, but I think that game looks all right.
Yeah. Common Reason asks, what do you think the odds are that we'll see The Walking Dead Season 2 on the new consoles? That's a good question. They didn't mention that in the press release, but they did mention, I want to say, other platforms.
Yeah.
In the press release, which leaves them some wiggle room on what they do with that. I played The Walking Dead on the PS3, and so my save is there, and they did say to keep your save.
Right.
So I would rather not play that on the PS3. I would like to transfer that save over and play it on the PS4. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know how technically that would work.
Well, because they don't. There's no backwards compatibility for that stuff, right?
No, but I think like this. I don't know. Like it seems like they'd be able to maybe pull in the choices from the save data, though. Like I mean,
right.
But I don't. I'm spitting bullshit out of my mouth about how or whether that's possible. I hope so. I'd rather not have to boot up my PS3 to play that. I would much rather play that on the PS4. But if they're not mentioning it up front, it would, I feel like, suggest that it's not going to be at launch.
Yeah, probably not.
Let me see if they said anything. I'm going to do a quick Google search. PS4.
Should I answer another question while you're doing that?
Mm-hmm.
There was one I had. Damn it, I can't. Oh, there it is. Ragnar wants to know, what would you like to see in the first fully next-gen wrestling game? Tress effects, Kinect mocap, taunts. What's your thing? For me, I would love it if for one thing, they really need to improve the fucking graphics engine in that game, because that shit has been old since the PS2. Two, I would love to see them try to do something more interesting with the universe mode in terms of like creating more dynamic feuds and storylines and stuff like that. Because again, I echo the point Jeff makes every time he talks about wrestling games, is that you watch wrestling because you like the stupid drama. It's not necessarily just because you just want to watch guys, underwear hug each other for 3 hours at a time. And I would love it if they found a way to include more just branching paths, choices, ways to kind of make the weird, TV drama of wrestling find its way into the games. I think that would be neat. And also, dear God, better hair. That's pretty much what I've got on that front.
So, Telltale has said, We haven't announced any plans for next gen, but everyone here at Telltale is pretty excited about the possibilities that PlayStation 4 can offer. So that suggests to me that I think you can put good money down that you're going to get The Walking Dead on PS4 and Xbox One. My guess is it doesn't happen when the first episode drops, but happens sometime a little after that. They haven't said... Oh, and earlier in the year, they had said... we're in close contact with... Oh, so they've been talking with Sony. This was much earlier in the year. This was back in March. They were talking to Sony about the possibility of getting the saves to transfer over. So they haven't said anything one way or the other. I would like to be hopeful about it. I wouldn't mind, playing the first episode on PS3 and then moving over to the PS4 with the second episode. But crossing my fingers. Crossing my fingers.
Fair enough.
Let's see. Answer one more question. Potato Skull asked, "Do you think South Park could be a cross-gen game?" What do you think?
No. I think that they'll just put that on current hardware, and if they're already having this much trouble getting that game to work well on current gen hardware, I can't imagine there's anything meaningful they would be able to do to try and get it ready for next gen in that time frame. So, not so much.
That seems about it. I think that's the show.
You think that's a show?
I mean,
that was a long show. We did a long show today.
That was a long show. So what are you up to this weekend? What are you doing? What are you playing this weekend?
Nothing really. I'm gonna play some more games, and I'm gonna just kind of hunker myself down for the forthcoming deluge of next gen stuff. But other than that, I'm just gonna trying to catch up on backlog stuff. What do you got going on?
Well, I'm going to a friend's cabin over the weekend with some friends. Right. I am going to lug this PC along because we're going to a cabin. It's going to be very dark. It's going to be spooky. I want to expose a bunch of people to the Oculus Rift horror games.
Oh, God.
Which just sounds like something really mean to do, because I think doing that out, here's how I want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The way I want to do it is get an extension cord, have an extension cord go out to the campfire where we were all sitting, and do that just straight up in the woods.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's my plan. I want to play Dread Halls in the forest, in the dark. Drunk.
You could not get me drunk enough to try that. I'm sorry. There's just no way. You would have to get me pretty drunk to even do that in just a darkened room. So I wish you the best of luck getting that to happen.
I'm pretty excited about it. So I'm gonna be doing that this weekend. I'm gonna bring my 3DS with me, I'm sort of because as I'm not playing normally I'd be playing Assassin's Creed right now. Because I'm actually looking forward to playing 4. They seem to have hooked me again. Yeah, people seem to be into it, especially people that didn't like 3. But I'm waiting for PC/next gen. I think I'm probably gonna play that on PS4.
I think I probably will check it out on PS4 as well.
So that's a couple weeks back for me. But yeah, if people want to continue the Giant Bomb Gravy Train, looks like Jeff has started his weird Mixler thing that he's been doing while he drives in to work.
And then, of course, we have plenty of Extra Life stuff coming up on the site this weekend.
I guess Brad's doing 24 hours by himself, which just sounds insane.
That I don't even know what to say to that boy, other than I wish him the best of luck and hope he maintains his sanity. And then I think Jeff and other people are getting in on it on Sunday. So
yeah, so there's a lot of going on this weekend. So
I'll be in the chat probably a decent amount during that stuff. I'll be around, chatting with people. I'm not doing a stream myself, but I will be around to check out, see what the guys in SF are doing. Yeah,
so we wish all of them luck. We will see all you guys on. I think they call it Monday.